Well, everyone, we made it to another Friday the 13th. As you all should know, Friday the 13th is one of my favorite horror franchises, which is why I've been on a mission to review all of the movies one Friday the 13th at a time. And as of right now, I'm on part 3.
Friday the 13th, part 3, in 3D.
So I've actually never seen this in 3D. I want to, but I'm not trying to use those cheap cardboard glasses, and I don't have a fancy 3D TV. I guess I'll be stuck watching this in 2D forever.
Feel sorrier for me!
Friday the 13th Part 3 came out in August 13th, 1982, which happens to be a Friday, making this the very first Friday the 13th to actually come out on a Friday the 13th. This was also supposed to be the last movie of the franchise. The intent was to have this be a trilogy, but this went on to make even more money than the previous two, so we all know what happened next. This is also the first Friday movie that doesn't revolve around a group of camp counselors. Instead, we focus on a group of friends getting together for a weekend at a cabin in the woods. Now, I'm just gonna go out and say it. This is my favorite movie in the franchise. I know it has a bunch of flaws, the lousy acting, that weird biker gang that comes out of nowhere, the cheesy 3D effects. I'll get to all of that and more, but let's start with what I liked. Now, there's a lot, so bear with me if it feels like I'm jumping all over the place. Let me start with Jason himself. Thanks to the first two movies, most of the background and lore about him and Camp Crystal Lake had already been established. So in part 3, they were able to just focus on Jason, and they did a great job. This is absolutely my favorite portrayal of Jason in the entire franchise. First of all, this is where he gets his iconic mask. And the funny thing is, you could tell that no one on the entire set had any idea about how important this mask would go on to become. I mean, just look at this underwhelming introduction. And part 3 is actually in a very special place in the timeline of the franchise. It's after he's finally established as the main killer. He finally has his hockey mask, but it's also before they turned him into some immortal, unstoppable force that can teleport. In this one, he's still kinda human. He actually avoids getting hit or stabbed. He can actually get knocked down. And I really love this Jason that isn't completely overpowered. I also feel like the suspense was handled in a very different way in part 3 than it was in the previous movies. In the originals, there were a lot of shots from behind bushes or branches. Sometimes it was hard to tell whether or not that was just like a tricky camera shot, or was it supposed to be like a first-person view from someone lurking in the woods. It was suspenseful. It was also ambiguous. Now, that's not a terrible thing. I do like it. It's just, I like the way they did it in number 3 a lot better. Here, they didn't just suggest that Jason might be watching from a distance. They showed you Jason watching from a distance. And even when it's from another character's perspective, you can actually see him in the background. This really intensified his presence throughout the entire movie. It even makes it more exciting to watch again because it gives you all kinds of little Easter eggs to hunt for. Like right here, you can see Jason walking away after he takes Fox from the rope. I didn't know this a week ago. I've watched this movie countless times over the years, and I'm still discovering little moments like these, which of course makes it fun to watch again and again. Part 3 also has a great kill count. One of my complaints about Part 2 was that after all the characters were introduced, half of them left to hang out at a bar all night.
Anybody wants a last night on the town, now's your chance.
So every time I watched it, I end up waiting for a bunch of kills that never happen. Well, that's not the case here. Just about everybody dies. And the best kill, of course, goes to Andy.
I can't hear you.
And speaking of Andy, he and Debbie are my favorite couple. Debbie is pregnant.
We would have been there already if some people didn't have to go to the bathroom every 5 minutes.
That's what happens when you're pregnant.
And Andy, instead of being just some stereotypical teenage deadbeat who ditches his girlfriend to avoid any responsibility, he actually sticks around. What a great guy, even if he offers his girlfriend a beer.
You want a beer or not?
No way, we're pregnant, remember?
It was the 80s, what do you expect? These two are such a great couple, and they would have gone on to be great parents. And how does the movie reward them? Why are more people not talking about this? This poor young couple and their unborn child. Gone. It's just terrible. Now, I don't care what you think. Another one of my favorite characters is Shelly.
I'm not an asshole. I'm an actor.
In any other movie, this would be such an uninteresting throwaway character. But here, I love the guy. Sure, he's annoying, but he's also got enough backstory to make him arguably the most relatable person in the movie. He's awkward, lonely, and fat.
They said they were going skinny dipping, and I'm not skinny enough.
So it's understandable that he would act out to get attention. And the fact that nobody likes him, it just makes you feel bad for the guy.
I was thinking that maybe, we could...
I don't think so.
Emotional, damn it!
Also, he's the one who gives Jason his mask, so there's that. I think these characters should have been the survivors. At the very least, Debbie and Shelly. Debbie, obviously, because she's pregnant, and Shelly because, well, he's the most interesting person. A misunderstood, aspiring actor who is so passionate about his craft. He also carries most of his prized possessions in a box.
What do you got in there?
My whole world.
And that little thing?
Stick around. You'll see. Oh, what's in the box?
Anyway, the main character that does survive is Chris. And man, oh man, is she a badass in the third act. This is easily the best final chase in the entire franchise. The last act of the movie starts with a long build-up with Chris and Rick looking around the cabin for their friends.
Listen, I'm gonna go out to the living room and check on what's going on up there.
There aren't any jump scares, but it's still tense because you know Jason's out there somewhere, and Chris is starting to realize that something isn't quite right.
Rick!
Then we get this scene.
Everything all right?
I always loved this shot. To me, it represents the Friday the 13th franchise as a whole. Not only is Jason out there lurking where he can't be seen, he's also out there murdering your friends. So with Rick dead and Chris by herself, she finally comes face to face with Jason. I love this moment, and I especially love hearing Jason's footsteps as he's approaching. So this scene marks the beginning of the final chase. Jason chases her all throughout the cabin, but Chris isn't your typical final girl. She actually fights back. She knocks all those books on him, which wasn't that effective, but it's more than I would do. She actually pulls a knife out of a dead body and uses it to stab him. Not once, but twice. She jumps out of a second-story window, and then instead of running away, she stalks Jason and ambushes him with a log over the head. She actually tries to run him over, unlike other idiots in the franchise.
Yeah, that really scared the shit out of him.
She eventually hangs him and drives an axe into his head. We even get a dream sequence that extends the chase scene into the next day. That's a finale.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Okay, before I get into what I didn't like, I wanted to address a few complaints that I don't think this movie deserves. First of all, the 3D. Yeah, most of the attempts at 3D just come off as schlocky. A lot of the times you can even see the wires. But so what? At least they're practical effects. I don't care how many wires I can see. Bad practical effects are so much better than bad CGI. Also, let's not forget that this movie wasn't made to be watched on a high-definition flat screen. This was intended to be a 3D theater experience 40 years ago. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that some of the effects didn't hold up well. If anything, the cheesy 3D effects just adds to the charm of the movie. You know, I'd much rather see a couple of idiots juggling directly into the camera than watch Alice make coffee for an entire scene.
Shut up and get to the point!
That biker gang also gets a lot of criticism. And I get it, it's stupid, they come out of nowhere, but again, so what? If you're gonna introduce a bunch of characters just to up the body count, why not have them be a bunch of bikers? So, stupid? Yes, but I'll let it go. Something else that gets a lot of undeserved hate is Chris's backstory. So towards the end of the movie, Chris tells a story about how she was attacked by Jason and somehow got away. You're never explicitly told what happened, but people are all upset and convinced that he raped her. Now, I don't think this is the case. I know this is early in the franchise, but so far, Jason is quite obviously not motivated by sexual desires. Sure, he kills people having sex, but he never did anything inappropriate with them. That would be gross. Okay, I'm going to keep talking about the Chris backstory, but now I'm going to move into what I did not like. Regardless of what you think happened to Chris, what really bothers me about this backstory is the fact that it's just so out of nowhere. It doesn't go with the rest of the movie. It's just so out of place. I think it would have been better to have her backstory be told in the beginning of the movie. We could have opened up on her and Rick on their date. She gets home late, gets in a fight with her parents and runs away. She eventually is attacked by Jason, and then it just fades out into the title sequence. That would have been a hell of an opening, and it would have done two things. First of all, it would have introduced Chris's encounter sooner, making it seem like it was more part of the actual movie rather than it being an afterthought. And second, it would have eliminated the actual beginning that we got, because the beginning to this movie sucks. It's just the ending to part 2.
Jason, Mother is talking to you!
Now, to be fair, part 2 also did something like this, but at least it had the decency to make it a dream sequence. Part 3 just blatantly used 5 minutes from the previous movie, and it's so boring to sit through, especially if you're watching 2 and 3 back to back. Another thing that drives me crazy is the acting. Now, I know that Friday the 13th movies definitely aren't known for good acting.
If that's how you feel, forget it. I'll just go help somebody else instead.
But this is the worst. The director basically only cared about gathering shots that would work in 3D. He didn't really care about the actors' performances, which is really too bad because these god-awful performances hold the movie back. I mentioned in my review for part 2 that I was upset they killed off Ralph. Well, it seems like I wasn't the only one, because in this one they introduced a weirdo new Ralph, and he sucks. Why is he lying in the middle of the road? And where did he get that eye?
That's an eyeball!
And what's this movie's obsession with eyes?
I have warned thee! That's an eyeball! That's an eyeball! That's an eyeball!
I think in order to make this character more memorable or meaningful, he should have come back at some point later on in the movie. Maybe in the grocery store or something. He could have given Shelly and Vera another warning. Or even better, if they never would have killed off Ralph to begin with, they could have brought him back here. Just imagine how great this scene would have been if it had been Ralph instead.
I told the others. They didn't believe me. You're all doomed.
It really would have tied together the first 3 movies a lot better. Also, I hate at the end where Ali comes back to have one last showdown with Jason. I know it's such a small thing, but this is also such an important moment because it gives Chris that extra time she needs to grab the axe to kill Jason. And having it be one of the random bikers just makes this moment feel so hollow. I think this should have been Rick. I mean, can you imagine if he came charging in with his eyeball hanging out of his face just to have one last fight with Jason? Rick was the love interest for Chris, and it would have been a lot more meaningful to have him be the one who saved her, rather than just some random guy from the middle of the movie. And do you realize that as a kid, I had no idea who this person was? I never made the connection that he was in the movie before. I always just thought he was some random dude passing by.
Who the hell are you?
And finally, just like the beginning, I hate the ending. One of my favorite parts is when Jason comes back the next morning, which is why I'm always disappointed that this is a dream sequence. And then I'm doubly disappointed when Mrs. Voorhees comes jumping out of the lake. This is so stupid. I wish the movie would have ended right here with Jason running. This movie absolutely has its flaws. It isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but what makes it my favorite basically comes down to a couple of things. First of all, I think this is the best portrayal of Jason. I love how he's just strong enough to withstand being stabbed and hanged, but he's still vulnerable enough to be knocked down. I think it's the perfect balance to have just a little bit of supernatural in there, but still mostly realistic. Some of the later movies really went off the deep end as far as having Jason be some unstoppable force. And as far as I'm concerned, they're worse because of it. The second thing that makes this movie great to me is the final chase. Every time I sit down to watch this, I look forward to the ending. It's so good. When I was a kid, I would just fast forward right to the final chase and just watch it over and over again. And if I told you that I never did this as an adult, I'd be lying. Thanks for hanging out with me on another Friday the 13th. The next one will be in January of 2023. Until then, Watch out for Jason. Thanks for watching, everyone. My name's Kenny, and until next time, let's not just watch movies. Let's talk about them, too. I never talked about the music. The music's good, too. That disco, funky music.